Hello, good evening. Would you pay to come to work? That's the question being asked to hundreds of staff at one of the biggest employers in Nottingham.
Unions for workers at Imperial Tobacco, one of the world's largest cigarette makers, say they're considering going on strike over the company's decision to make them pay part of the controversial workplace parking levy.
Well, there's outrage that it comes at a time when the country is still in recession and money is tighter than ever. Jane Hesketh has our top story.
From April, it could be more costly than risky to park your car at work. Imperial Tobacco say they'll pass on some of the costs of the workplace parking levy onto their 600 Nottingham staff. Unions say this decision means members will ballot on strike action.
These employees have always had free car parking. It's outside of the main city centre and all transport routes. These people work shifts which are at all different times of the day, and for the vast majority of them they have no choice but to use their car to get to work.
People working for firms within the City Council boundary will have to pay up to £279 a year for a parking space.
I think for me it's going to be a concern because I've just actually relocated with work, so I'm actually travelling a little bit further every day, so I'm already paying extra on petrol.
It's just another charge, and I think, you know, when you come into work and you're paying out enough as it is to park your car and pay at work, I think it's just a bit too much.
The council say the levy's needed to help pay for extensions to the tram system, and this will help reduce congestion. But the idea of another compulsory bill isn't welcomed by some workers.
When you actually live outside Nottingham, the petrol's so expensive, and having to park, I think it's just a bit wrong. I think it's just another way to make some money, really.
People having to pay road tax, plus you pay rent rates, things like that. When you actually work for a firm, I think that should come as part and parcel of the deal.
Imperial Tobacco had opposed the levy and in a statement told us they were taking a reasonable and responsible approach by proposing to share the cost burden with our employees. Our approach is in line with other companies and organisations in the city. The ballot on strike action will take place here in the next couple of weeks. Jane Hesketh in Nottingham for Central Tonight.
Well, for more on this, we can speak to John Dowson from the Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire Chamber of Commerce, who's in our newsroom for us this evening. Good evening to you, sir. Mr. Dowson, no employee or employer wants to pay to park at work, of course. Specifically, though, what's your big problem with it?
Well, we think it's a very unfair way of raising money for public transport, and it presents businesses with a difficult decision as to whether to absorb the tax themselves or to pass that on to their employees.
The council would argue, of course, though, that they're going to plough all the money that they make from this scheme back into the infrastructure in terms of tram redevelopments, redeveloping Nottingham Station. It's got to be paid for somehow. Is this not a fair way of doing it?
Well, it's actually taxing people that aren't going to benefit from some of those improvements, and obviously not taxing those that will.
But are those benefits ultimately, though, over the long term, the council would argue, good for business in Nottingham, aren't they?
I certainly see some business benefits from the new tram networks that will help develop business opportunities there, but the other business parks that are having to pay, it's adding to the cost of the businesses locating there and making them less attractive.
In terms of what might happen next then, do you fear that other companies might follow suit? You might see more calls for strike action?
Well, we'd hope that that wouldn't be the case. Obviously, it's an issue for each employer to negotiate with their employees as to the best way forward, but taking this additional cost is not good for business.
You've been digging your heels in over this for the last 12 years, I think it is. It's been delayed year after year. Is now the time to say, well, it's going to happen, we just have to live with it?
I think it's obviously going to happen now. Whether it will continue and whether there needs to be an end date to this levy, and whether we could look at other ways to raise the funds to fund the new tram lines is a different matter.
And just finally, very quickly, how would you look at raising that money elsewhere? What are your big ideas?
Well, there are other opportunities that government are putting forward in terms of supplementary business rates and other mechanisms which could be used and would be a bit fairer.
OK, John Dowson from the Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire Chamber of Commerce, thank you very much for joining us on the programme this evening with your thoughts. A very controversial issue, of course.